enjoy them most. Go to thehighersidechats.com or just click the link in the show notes to get started, and within a minute you'll be plugging in your new Plus Show RSS feed into a hopefully decentralized podcasting 2.0 supported app. Feed the things you want to grow and starve the things that gotta go, and we will reach the promised land. Think about that and enjoy the show.
In the 1930s, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt addressed the nation through a series of radio broadcasts known as the Fireside Chats. His aim was to reassure the common man that our society would recover from its troubled times. Well, we're far from 1930, and I deal with a different kind of fire. For a new era of worldly frustration, we offer a fresh conversation. I'm Greg Carlwood, and these are the Higher Side Chats.
Here we go, Higher Side Chatters, doing the thing from sunny San Diego. I'm Greg Carlwood, and it seems like we're in a time where everything is backwards. And it seems to me the culture shapers, academic authorities, and regulatory agencies have worked very hard to get it this way. Undue pressure is put on small organic farmers while glyphosate-soaked foods fill our grocery stores. The FDA demands a heavy-handed warning for natural herbs and vitamin supplements that have proven track records that go back decades, while they allow some pretty harsh side effects and damage to accompany Big Pharma's approved products. The education system has ushered in software-based learning on corporate marketing devices when many studies show that internet technologies, social media, and iPad devices are not kind to developing minds. And our politicians are using the signs of changing climate to exert more power over the people rather than focusing on the corporate polluters and the problematic products they produce en masse. And it all speaks to the arrogance of modern industrialized society, that this is the most advanced we've ever been, the ancient past has little to no value, and that if it makes dollars, then it doesn't have to make sense. Well, today we're welcoming back Randall Carlson, who has done a lot to help me see the wisdom and the depth of ancient cultures, as well as the value of sacred geometry and systems of measurement that go back further than we even know. And his work on catastrophism and the awareness of cycles of time puts the past, present, and future in a much-needed new context. His areas of interest seem to know no bounds, and you can find many great presentations and topic discussions on his website, randallcarlson.com, home to his Cosmographia podcast and a robust archive of videos now through HowTube. He's putting together some amazing tours as well, taking people out to see the changes left by the last major cataclysm and the remnants of cultures long lost to history. A jack of many trades, and I'm psyched to get into it. The great builder, teacher, and ever-friendly Freemason, the granddaddy of the younger Dryas, Randall Carlson. Welcome back to the Higher Side.
Well, thanks for having me back, Greg. I'm so flabbergasted by that introduction. I'm having to kind of recover a little bit here.
Then I've done my job.
Recover my composure.
Nice, yes. And it's been too long, man. I am jealous of all the fun you're having with the Grammarica guys and the Serpent Bros. Those tours and retreats do look like a really good time. I'm hoping to get out on one. And now that I see how easy it is for everything to just kind of stop unexpectedly, I can't take opportunities for granted anymore, you know? Got to get out there.
Get out there while you got the chance. Get while the getting's good.
Amen to that.
Yeah. Well, we've been missing you, Greg.
Too kind. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Like people ask, where is that guy? I don't know, man.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, man. But there are so many great things we could talk about. So many topics covered in your Cosmographia podcast that I'd love to have you elaborate on. But I think one of the most fascinating things I've heard you talk about recently would be your future vision of revitalizing principles of sacred geometry and building out infrastructure using the archaic principles, because there seemed to be so much intelligence to building in the past that is maybe missing from our modern ways of doing things. And I hoped we could start there and talk about these ancient building principles, how we find that they were used all over the globe, and how you plan to bring them forward. But when it comes to establishing some sort of new build, maybe you could give us a bit of an overview of the process as it was, which I believe would often start with the setting of the Gnomon pole. Is that right?
That's right. But the Gnomon pole actually was not the very first act. The first act was mapping out the subtle, if you want to call it the subtle energy of the landscape. And it was believed, and I think on empirical basis, that there are patterns of energy associated with the lay of the land, the topography, the type of rock and minerals present, the hydrosphere and what's going on there in terms of groundwater as well as surface water. All of these things are part of the whole matrix of material and energy that comes together to make a landscape. So all of this was taken into account. If you've ever heard of the term geomancy, Greg?
Right, yes.
Geomancy. Yeah, well, that's kind of, if you were going to look for a single term that kind of encompassed all of these ideas of mapping, essentially what you could think of as the sacred geography. The idea that there is a connect, the Chinese were very strong onto these ideas that there is a pattern, a hidden pattern in the landscape, and that there were ways to work with that pattern of energy that was associated with the hills, with the valleys, with the rivers, like I said, with the groundwater, with all of these factors coming together. And one of the ways that I would think a remnant of that ancient science, we can get more into the specifics of it, though, has kind of come down to us in the form of the water witching, as it's been called, or dowsing, where someone who has the sensitivity, mostly these days, it's through an enhancement of one's, I'll call it your subtle nervous system, for lack of a better term, using some type of instrument to enhance the response of your subtle nervous system to the changing flux of energy and patterns around you. But by connecting your consciousness with your subtle nervous system and extending that by means of instrumentation, which traditionally was typically a branch of a forked branch of, say, a hickory tree. Although it has extended, and there's all kinds of different ways you can approach it now, and technologies from, using pendulums to using swing rods. My first exposure to that was using swing rods many years ago when I was about to build a boat barn out here north of Atlanta along the Chattahoochee River. And the way I was going to build it was that somewhere the owner had gotten 15 telephone poles. Now, I don't know, maybe they were recycled telephone poles. That's apparently what they were. But the plan was to build a pole barn by putting 3 rows of these telephone poles in the ground, consisting of 5 in each row, into a rectangular pattern. And then once those 15 vertical telephone poles were in the ground, then I would come in there and tie them together with purlins and frame up walls, frame up a roof, then enclose it, put doors on both ends. And the guy had several boats, so when it was finished, it had doors on both ends that you could open. He could pull in with his truck, disconnect his boat, and pull out the other end. But where this relates to the whole point I'm making here is that the way the poles were going to be set, these are telephone poles, so it was just me and one helper. Would have been too much for us to try to dig the holes, and the 2 of us manually set whatever 30-foot long telephone poles. But back then, the telephone company, the local telephone company that we used to call Ma Bell, had a deal where they would send out their auger truck and dig the hole, and they had a boom, and they could set the poles if you wanted to do that. So, and I think they only charged $8 a pole. Now, this is 1974, I think, maybe 75. So things have gotten considerably more expensive. But in any case, I called the telephone company. I said, I've got 15 telephone poles that I want to have set. I need them drilled and set. And they sent the truck out and pulls up on the road. It's, this is in a rural area, so there's a gravel road in front. There's a driveway leading into the property. And what I did was I cleared the area where the barn was going to be, and then I had driven stakes. So I had laid out where all of the 15 poles were to be set, and I drove a wooden stake in each of those. So I had 15 stakes in the ground, each one marking the position where a telephone pole was going to be set. So the Ma Bell truck pulls up to the property, and the first guy that gets out, I could see that there were several guys in there, but the first guy that gets out, he's as tall, I would say not too elderly, maybe like 60-ish, gets out. He's tall, thin guy, maybe 6'5", 6'6", as best I can remember, wearing overalls and a really old crumpled hat. And he gets out and he's carrying what looks like a violin case. Then the other two guys, they get out, and I think one guy stays in the truck, the other guy gets out, he's standing by the truck. The guy in the overalls comes down, walking down. He could see, obviously, that I had a cleared area and that I had my 15 stakes driven in the ground. So he comes walking down there, and I don't remember what he says, maybe hello or whatever, but then he goes over and he opens up this thing that looks like a violin case, and he takes out 2 dowsing rods. They were swing rods. This is the first time I had ever seen swing rods, because I had heard of dowsing and probably had seen pictures or something, but it was always an old guy with a Fort Hickory switch, right? So he comes out, and what they are, Greg, is just basically 2 automobile antennas of the old-fashioned type that were telescoping with the round little ball on the end. And what he did was he bent them at the outer piece of tubing there. He bent to 90 degrees, and he cut off the sleeve, the outer sleeve, so that it was 6-7 inches in length. So he could hold that, and then the other piece of the antenna was free to swing back and forth. So he walks down and he's carrying these things. He's holding them in front of him. He's got his arms out in front of him at about, maybe waist high or a little higher. He's got a rod in both hands, and they're gently kind of waving back and forth, pivoting in their sleeves, right? And what he does is he then walks over with those rods, those swing rods, walks over each of the 15 stakes that I had in the ground. And as he walks over them, nothing much happens. He walks over them with his rods, and he calls up to the guys at the truck, clear. Walks over the next one, clear. Walks over the next one, clear. All 15 of them were clear. Okay, cool. I guess I was interpreting that to mean that, there was no problem with them going ahead and digging a 6 or 8 foot deep hole there, right?
Right.
Now, at this point, when he first got out, I was like, oh, what is this? And, on construction sites and all that, especially back in those days, guys always used to play little pranks and jokes on each other and things like that to keep the morale up and keep the humor up, because you have to. If you're out working and you're a part of a team and it's 105 degrees